Hey, buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Hearthstone is the game, and this is my take on the best 7+ mana cards in Hearthstone. So any card that costs 7 or more, I think these are the very best of them. Now when I say best, that doesn't necessarily mean they would win in a fight on an empty board. That just means that they've had the biggest impact and influence on the game, both currently and throughout Hearthstone's history. So these are the cards that are the most important and valuable in the metagame. So starting off with number 10, it is the Mage card. That's not the Mage. That's not the Mage icon. The Mage card, Archmage Antonidas. This 7 mana 5/7 has one of the strongest raw effects in the game, I think. Whenever you cast a spell, add a fireball spell to your hand. So that's right, with some shenanigans you can create basically infinite fireballs thanks to Archmage Antonidas, and that really does make him one of the ultimate late game trump cards when it comes to generating value and winning the game. Lots of different mage decks run Archmage Antonidas. He finds his way into so many different lists just because of that raw power that even when you've been losing a game for a very long time, if you find a way to make Archmage Antonidas go off, you can still dig out a win and take the victory in games that you really had no business even competing in, and that's why he cracks this list for me. Moving on to number 9 is the Warlock card, Lord Jurexis. Another card with an incredible effect. He's a 9 mana 3/15 minion, but we don't really care so much about that. We care about his battle cry, destroy your hero and replace it with Lord Jurexis, at which point you go down to 15 maximum health, but you have a 3 attack, 8 duration weapon, and a new hero power that allows you to spawn a 6/6 minion every turn for only 2 mana. And much like Archmage Antonidas, if you get Lord Jurexis out and you're not quite dead, usually he'll generate enough late game value to just absolutely swing games in your favor and allow you to become a dominant, unstoppable force. And Lord Jurexis is not in every Warlock deck just because there are so many popular ones out there, so he doesn't always work his way into lists like Zoo unless they're perhaps a Demon Zoo. But he's in so many different decks and has such a big impact and has been so important to decks like Handlock, which dominated Hearthstone for a very long time and still exists to this day, that Lord Jurexis carves his way onto this list. Moving on to the 8th best card on my list. It is not that one. That's one of the worst. It is the 9 mana card, Malygos. This big giant dragon is a 4/12, which is nice, but rarely ever does Malygos even attack because it's his effect that makes him so strong. He has spell damage +5. That's right, +5, so fireballs suddenly hit for 11 damage. But even spells like a Rogue's Eviscerate suddenly hits for 9, or Sinister Strike hits for 8. And that's what makes Malygos so unbelievably good across a variety of classes, almost all of them, in fact. There are some Malygos decks out there that allow you to do crazy burst damage over the course of a single turn, especially when you're using things like mana reductions from Emperor Thorson or just really cheap damage spells along with extra mana cards like Innervate or the Coin or Preparation and so on and so forth. So being able to get Malygos out and having a few damage spells in hand usually signals doom for your opponent, where you can do 20, 30, 40 damage in a single turn thanks to this card. And because he has defined so many different decks as its centerpiece, that's why Malygos makes this list, even though he's probably not played the most compared to future cards on the list. Moving on, the 7th best 7+ mana card for me is Grommash Hellscream. This 8 mana 4/9 is all about his charge and enrage. And warriors have so many different ways to do damage to their own minions that it's very easy to enrage Grommash here, making him a 10 attack charging minion, which is the ultimate way to end games. And as long as warrior has existed, Grommash Hellscream has been one of their key finishing minions to this day. He's still a finisher in a variety of different warrior decks, including Control and Patron. So he's got tons of value as a minion. He's got even more value as a finisher, and I would venture that more than almost any card in the game, more heroes have died at the hands of Grommash Hellscream than any other card. And even though he's a class card, that isn't played in every class like many of our future cards. He's just so good at ending games that he takes the number 7 spot on my list. Moving on to our first neutral card, and I will say that neutral cards on my list do get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt and a little boost on the ranking just because they can be played across multiple classes compared to a class card. And that's why Molten Giant, even though you might say Molten Giant isn't better than Grom, are you crazy? Molten Giant still takes a higher spot on this list just because he can be used by any class and has been used by multiple classes throughout the history of Hearthstone. Molten Giant, this 20 mana minion, is an 8/8 giant body that costs 1 less for each damage your hero has taken. So when you get down to 10 health, suddenly your Molten Giant becomes totally free. And that effect is incredibly strong because you get a 0 mana 8/8, but even if you're down at 14 and you get a 4 mana 8/8, usually you're not complaining too bad. Molten Giant has been most popular in handlock style decks with warlocks who damage themselves over the course of a game to the point where they can get really cheap Molten Giants and then make huge plays using taunts or Shadow Flames or various other shenanigans they have access to. So Molten Giants have enabled handlock as an archetype for a very, very long time. They were even popular back in the old days of Hearthstone with warriors who were able to charge Molten Giants and win games very rapidly that way. They've been popular with things like Giant's Mage as well. Molten Giant has just been a very difficult card to deal with for a very long time, and a few different very prominent decks have been built around it, and that's why it takes its spot on this list. Moving on to the 5th best 7+ mana card, it is the Dragon Sara. This is another 9 mana for 12 from the Dragonflight, but Sara is another card that's all about just late game dominance. If she survives for a turn or two, there's a very good chance she's going to signal a win for your side. At the end of your turn, add a dream card to your hand. Now, of course, she has a few different dream cards, some really strong minions like a 4 mana 7/6. She has spells as well, like Nightmare, which allows you to do 5 extra damage to the enemy face. Sara Awakens does 5 damage to everything on the board, including both heroes. So a variety of tools that Sara provides access to, along with just some really strong minions and effects as well. So that's why if she's around for multiple turns, generally attached to that giant body of hers, she's also just getting so much value from those cards that she will win you the game, and she is an important component of a variety of different control, really slow style decks throughout the history of Hearthstone up to this day. Moving on to the 4th best 7+ mana card, it belongs to Ragnaros, the Fire Lord. This 8 mana 8/8 can't actually attack, but at the end of its turn, it deals 8 damage to a random enemy. So Ragnaros basically just becomes a cannon you place on the board that randomly starts shooting everything for huge damage. Ragnaros, much like Sara, if he lives for more than a couple turns, can have a huge impact, but even just if you play him once, hitting the enemy face or 8 or clearing a big minion for 8 usually is a significant enough play that you're guaranteed to get some value out of Rag, and that makes him a key component to so many different decks. He's just been kind of a toss him in and let him do his thing in a lot of control decks throughout the history of Hearthstone, and remains that to this day. So occasionally you'll just see that random Ragnaros that fits right in and makes a huge play. And of course, some of Hearthstone's most memorable random moments have come at the hands of Ragnaros in tournaments. And anyone who's played with Ragnaros a fair amount has had their own unbelievable story where Ragnaros either won them a game or cost them a game. And that makes him important to the history and the lore of Hearthstone. And that's why he's on this list for me. Up next, we're up to the top 3. The 3rd best 7+ mana card for me actually belongs to one last class card, and that's Paladin's 8 mana Tyrion Fordring. I think there's a strong argument that this is the best overall minion in Hearthstone. So like if you put him on a board, he would win in a fight, right? He's just packed with so much value. A 6/6 body is fantastic. Divine Shield is amazing. Taunt is wonderful. And to top it all off, if that wasn't enough, he also has the best death rattle in the game, perhaps, which is equipping a 5/3 Ashbringer weapon, which would almost be 8 mana all on its own. And you get all these other things with it. Tyrion just has it all. He's a centerpiece to Paladin. Anything except the most aggressive Paladin decks They all run him just because anytime you play him, you feel good about it. And he wins games all by himself. And that's why, despite being a class card, he's just so unbelievably good and so much better than his peers that he ranks in the top 3 of my list. But he's not the best. I have 2 more cards I think are even better, starting with the number 2 card, Alexstrasza, another dragon at 9 mana, but this time it's an 8/8 body attached to one of the game's best battle cries. You set a hero's remaining health to 15. That means that, yes, Alexstrasza can deal 15 damage to an opponent if they're at 30 health, or in fact, she can heal you for 14 damage if you're down to 1. So the flexibility in that battle cry and the combos that it sets up and all the different things throughout Hearthstone's history that Alexstrasza has enabled in regards to decks makes her just so important and so devastating and so powerful that she tops all these other dragons. The best dragon in the game, one of the best 7+ mana cards in the game, and fits into so many different things. I absolutely adore Alexstrasza, and I hope she survives the arrival of standard mode in the very near future. But she's not the best 7+ mana card. You probably already know what card it's going to be. It is the beloved or the hated Dr. Boom, 7 mana, 7/7, with a battle cry, summon 2 1/1 boom bots, and of course those boom bots also have a death rattle that they do 1 to 4 damage randomly to a random opponent, making Dr. Boom just insanely high value for its cost. It can devastate enemy boards, it can win you games, it's great to stall out opponents. It doesn't really matter when or where you play Dr. Boom, it's probably a good play as long as you're not dead that same turn. I really don't have that much to say about Dr. Boom. You know him, you probably love him, or you hate him. In either case, he is the best 7+ mana card in Hearthstone. And there you have it. That wraps it up for my list, not only today, but all of my cards I've ran through 1 mana to 7 mana. That's it for all my best cards at each mana cost. So thanks so much for watching not only this video, but hopefully the whole series as well. If you have any questions about this list or any of the rest, hit me up in the comments. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thanks so much for spending some time with me, and until next time, game on.